When I was just 8 years old, my ruthless parents yelled at me and kicked me out of the house. They always favored my younger brother, making me feel like I didn't belong. I wandered the dark streets, scared and alone, when suddenly a kind woman approached me and took me in. Fast forward 15 years, I became a successful woman, and when my parents came back into my life, I was ready to respond differently and change everything. Growing up in a wealthy family in Austin, Texas, I often felt like a shadow in my own home. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, were high-powered attorneys who seemed to thrive on their status and success. They idolized my younger brother, Max, who excelled academically and effortlessly garnered their praise. In contrast, I struggled to meet their high expectations, constantly feeling neglected and mistreated. No matter how hard I tried, it was never enough to earn their approval. Little did I know then, my journey would take a significant turn thanks to my aunt, Nancy. My name is Lily. At 8 years old, everything came to a head. I had just come home from school, my heart racing as I thought about my latest test results. I had studied hard, but I still didn't get the grade my parents wanted. That evening, I heard their voices raised in the living room. "She's a disappointment," my mother shouted. "We've given her every opportunity, and what do we get in return?" I stood frozen outside my bedroom door, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Why can't you understand? I'm trying." I wanted to scream, but the words caught in my throat. That night, after dinner, they confronted me. "Lily, we can't keep doing this. You need to shape up, or you'll have to find somewhere else to live," my father said coldly. I thought it was a joke, but his expression was grave. "You're not living up to your potential." "Where will I go?" I whispered, terrified. "Figure it out," he replied. That was the last straw. With my heart pounding in my chest, I packed a small bag and left the house, knowing I had nowhere to go. I wandered the streets of Austin, feeling lost and afraid. The bright lights of the city were overwhelming, and the sounds of laughter and conversation echoed around me. I felt utterly alone, an outsider in a place that should have felt like home. Hours passed, and despair crept in. Just when I thought all hope was lost, I saw a familiar face. Nancy, my aunt, stood in front of me. "Lily, what are you doing here?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I didn't know where else to go," I admitted, my voice trembling. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around me. "Come with me," she said gently. "You're safe now." Nancy was 40 years old, a restaurant manager with a kind heart. She had always been my refuge, the only one who believed in me. I followed her to her modest apartment, feeling a flicker of hope reignite within me. As we settled in, she made me a warm bowl of soup. "I was so worried about you," she said, her voice soothing. "You can stay with me for as long as you need." Living with Nancy transformed my life. She filled the emotional void my parents had left behind. "You're smart, Lily. You can do anything you set your mind to," she encouraged. With her support, I began to excel in school. I studied harder than ever, driven by the desire to prove that I was capable of success. Max, meanwhile, was struggling under the weight of our parents' expectations. I could see the toll it took on him. One evening, I found him in our old neighborhood, sitting on the steps of our family home, strumming his guitar. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, sitting down beside him. "Just thinking," he replied, his brow furrowed. "Mom and Dad want me to follow their path, but I want to do music. It feels like they don't even care about what I want." "I understand," I said, feeling the pain of our shared struggle. "You have to follow your passion, Max." "But they'll be so mad," he sighed, looking down at his guitar. "Maybe it's time to stand up for yourself," I encouraged, remembering my own journey. "You deserve to be happy." As the weeks passed, I flourished under Nancy's care, but the rift between Max and our parents grew wider. They discovered that he had enrolled in a performing arts school, and the explosion that followed was something I will never forget. One evening, I returned home from school to find our parents in a heated argument with Max. "You're throwing your life away," Mr. Hayes shouted, his face red with anger. "No, Dad. I'm doing what I love." Max defended himself, his voice rising. "That's not how we raised you. You're wasting your potential, Mrs. Hayes added, her tone harsh. I stepped into the living room, my heart racing. This isn't fair. He has the right to choose his own path, I shouted, feeling a rush of adrenaline. Stay out of this, Lily, my father barked. You've done enough damage already. That moment solidified the growing distance between us. I watched as Max stood his ground, but it was clear our parents' control over our lives was suffocating. The confrontation marked a turning point, not just for Max but for me as well. As I settled into life with Nancy, I felt a new sense of hope. She became my rock, always encouraging me and reminding me of my worth. Her small apartment was filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of home-cooked meals. It was a stark contrast to the cold, demanding environment I had left behind. Lily, you're going to be a doctor one day. I just know it, Nancy would often say while helping me with my studies. You have the heart for it. Her belief in me sparked a fire within. I threw myself into my studies, determined to excel. School became my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the haunting memories of my childhood. I worked tirelessly, aiming for high grades, fueled by the desire to prove my worth, not just to myself, but also to my parents. As I flourished academically, I often thought about Max. He was still living under our parents' roof, and I worried about him. One day, I decided to call him. Hey, how's everything? I asked, trying to sound cheerful. It's the same, you know? Mom and Dad just don't get it, he replied, his voice heavy with frustration. They think I'm going to change my mind and go to law school like them. You won't, though, I said firmly. You're too talented for that. You need to follow your passion. I know, but it's hard when they keep pushing, Max admitted. I wish I could just escape like you did. Maybe you can, I suggested, feeling a rush of inspiration. You could come stay with me and Nancy for a while. It might help you figure things out. Yeah, maybe, he said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. As months passed, my dedication to becoming a doctor paid off. I graduated high school with honors and received a scholarship to a prestigious university. The moment I received my acceptance letter, I jumped up and down with excitement, clutching it tightly. I did it, Nancy. I'm going to be a doctor. Nancy hugged me tightly, tears of joy in her eyes. I always knew you could do it, Lily. You deserve this. But the joy was tinged with fear. I knew my parents would likely react negatively to my achievements, just as they always had. Sure enough, when I called to share the news, their response was lackluster. That's great, Lily, my father said, though his tone was flat. But remember, medical school is tough. You have to be perfect. Why can't you just be proud of her? Nancy interjected, frustration bubbling over. She's worked so hard for this. My parents' silence was deafening. They were still stuck in their old ways, unable to see my accomplishments as anything more than obligations to fulfill. It stung, but I refused to let their disappointment overshadow my joy. As I began my studies, I threw myself into my coursework. Medical school was rigorous, but I loved it. The knowledge I gained fueled my passion, and I thrived on the challenges. Late nights spent studying were often accompanied by texts from Max, who was trying to navigate his own path. Just finished another song, he texted one night. It's about breaking free from expectations. Can't wait to hear it, I replied, feeling proud of him. I hoped he would find the courage to pursue his dreams. As I advanced in my studies, my parents attempted to reach out again, but their motives felt insincere. They sent an email, suggesting I should consider law school instead. We're offering to help with tuition, Lily. Think about what a law degree could mean for your future, they wrote. I felt anger boil inside me. I'm not interested in being a lawyer. I shouted at my computer screen. I'm going to be a doctor. Nancy found me in this state one afternoon. What's wrong? She asked, concern in her eyes. They think I should drop everything and follow their path, I replied, frustration spilling over. It's like they can't accept who I really am. Lily, you are strong, Nancy said gently. You've come so far. Don't let their expectations pull you back down. Her words reminded me of my purpose. I was determined to break free from the chains of my past and pursue my passion for helping children. As I dove deeper into my studies, I found a sense of belonging and fulfillment that I had never experienced before. But the shadows of my childhood were always there, lurking just beneath the surface. I had escaped physically, but emotionally, the scars ran deep. I couldn't shake the feeling that my parents would never truly accept me. Despite this, I pushed forward, driven by the love and support from Nancy and my desire to create a better future for myself. Little did I know that the real test was yet to come, and the struggle for acceptance would become more complicated than I could ever imagine. As I continued my journey through medical school, I felt like I was finally becoming the person I was meant to be. I had a purpose, and my passion for helping children fueled my determination. I was surrounded by friends who shared my dreams, and for the first time, I felt a sense of belonging. But as I thrived in this new world, my parents' presence loomed over me like a dark cloud. I received occasional emails, reminders of their expectations, and suggestions that I consider a career in law. I would read their words and feel the old anger rise within me, but I had learned to compartmentalize those feelings. One evening, as I studied for an upcoming exam, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Max. "Can we talk? I need to figure things out," it read. I felt a wave of concern wash over me. "Of course. Come over," I replied, eager to support him. When he arrived, he looked more stressed than ever. "I can't take it anymore, Lily. Mom and Dad are relentless," he confessed, running a hand through his hair. "They think I'm just wasting my life away with music." "You know that's not true," I said, trying to reassure him. "You have talent, and you deserve to follow your passion." "I know, but every time I try to talk to them, it's like I'm speaking to a wall," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "They just don't get it." As we talked, I could see the struggle written on his face. I felt a deep sense of empathy for him. I had faced the same battles, and I knew how suffocating it felt. "Maybe it's time to stand up to them," I suggested. "You deserve to be happy." Max nodded slowly, but I could tell he was still hesitant. "I don't want to lose them completely." "Sometimes you have to take a stand for yourself," I replied. I had to do the same. "It's hard, but you'll be better for it." Days turned into weeks, and as I immersed myself in my studies, the looming confrontation with my parents hung in the air. I knew that eventually, I would have to face them. Then, one evening, I received a phone call from my parents. "We'd like to have a family dinner," my mother said. "It's important." A knot formed in my stomach. "Sure," I replied cautiously, unsure of what to expect. The dinner was set for a few days later. As the date approached, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I wanted to believe they were ready to reconcile, but a part of me braced for another round of disappointment. When the day arrived, I arrived at the restaurant early. I could feel my heart racing as I waited for them to arrive. When they walked in, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes looked just as imposing as ever. They took their seats, and I could sense the tension in the air. "Thank you for coming," my mother began, her voice cool. "We wanted to talk about our family and our future." "Okay," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I've been doing some thinking," Mr. Hayes said, leaning forward, "about your education and your future. We believe it's time for you to consider law school." My heart sank. "I've told you before, Dad. I want to be a doctor. That's my passion," I replied firmly. "Passion doesn't pay the bills," he snapped, frustration seeping into his tone. "You need to think practically." "Practicality isn't everything," I shot back, feeling the anger bubble up inside me. "I've worked so hard to get where I am, and I won't let you push me into a career I don't want." The tension in the restaurant thickened as patrons turned their heads, drawn to our heated exchange. "Lily, we only want what's best for you," my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. "But you're not making smart choices." "No, you're not listening. You've never listened," I yelled, unable to contain my emotions. "You've spent my entire life dictating my worth based on grades and achievements. I'm done." Suddenly, Max entered the restaurant, sensing the commotion. He spotted me and rushed over. "What's going on?" he asked, his eyes wide with concern. "Just a family discussion," Mr. Hayes said dismissively, but it was clear the situation had escalated. "Family? This doesn't look like family," Max replied, glaring at our parents. "You can't keep doing this to her. To us. What do you know about family?" Mrs. Hayes shot back, her voice harsh. "More than you think," Max shouted, stepping closer to me. "Lily deserves support, not judgment. We both do." In that moment, the dam broke. The emotions I had kept bottled up for years flooded out. I realized I had spent far too long trying to earn their love and approval, only to find that their expectations would never be enough. "Enough," I shouted, my voice trembling. "I'm done trying to live up to your standards. I'm finally happy, and I refuse to let you take that away from me." The restaurant was silent, and I could feel all eyes on us. It was a moment of raw vulnerability. The weight of my childhood, the pain, the rejection, the struggle, was laid bare for everyone to see. As I looked around, I knew I was ready to break free from the past. I was finally reclaiming my life. But I could sense that this confrontation was only the beginning of a much bigger battle. The silence in the restaurant was palpable. My heart raced as I faced my parents, the truth of my feelings laid bare. Max stood beside me, his presence a comforting anchor. I could see the shock on my parents' faces, but I wasn't backing down. "Lily, this isn't how you should talk to us," my father finally said, his voice trembling slightly. "Why not?" I shot back, my anger still simmering. "I've spent my entire life trying to please you, and it has only made me feel worse. I'm not a disappointment. I'm doing what I love." Max turned to them, his eyes fierce. "You need to understand that pushing us into careers we don't want isn't love. It's control." My mother looked taken aback, her facade of authority crumbling. "We thought we were doing what was best for you," she said quietly, the hurt evident in her voice. "Best for us? Or best for you?" I countered, feeling the weight of my words. "You've never seen us for who we really are. You only see your expectations." At that moment, I felt a shift within myself. I was no longer that scared little girl trying to earn her parents' love. I was an adult, a doctor with dreams of helping others. And I was finally ready to stand up for myself and Max. "Enough of this," I said firmly. "I won't let you dictate my future anymore. I am pursuing my dream of becoming a pediatrician, and nothing you say will change that." Tears welled in my mother's eyes as she seemed to realize the depth of her actions. "I just wanted you both to have secure futures," she said softly. "I thought that would make you happy." "Mom, happiness isn't defined by a job or a title," Max said gently. "It's about being true to ourselves. I want to make music, and Lily wants to help children. That's what will make us happy." The restaurant was still silent, and I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. For the first time, I could breathe freely. I had spoken my truth, and it felt liberating. "Maybe we've been too focused on our own definitions of success," Mr. Hayes admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "We didn't mean to push you away." I could see the sincerity in their eyes, but I also knew that words alone wouldn't heal the wounds. "It's going to take time for me to trust you again," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm willing to try if you are." With a heavy sigh, my mother nodded. "We want to support you, Lily. Really, we do. Can we start over?" Max and I exchanged glances. "Let's take it one step at a time," I replied cautiously. "We have a lot to work through." As we left the restaurant, I felt lighter. The confrontation had opened a door, not just for healing, but also for understanding. My parents were finally beginning to grasp the importance of unconditional love. In the weeks that followed, we began to rebuild our relationship. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard. But my parents made an effort to show their support. They attended my medical school events, and for the first time, I felt like they were genuinely trying to understand my passion. Meanwhile, Max continued to pursue his music. He played at local gigs, slowly carving out his own path. I admired his courage and felt proud of him for standing up for what he believed in. Eventually, Nancy, Max, and I decided to open a community center together for children. We wanted to create a safe space where kids could explore their passions, just like we had fought for ours. As I stood at the center's opening, surrounded by smiling faces, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. I had come so far, from a frightened girl trying to earn approval to a woman who embraced her dreams and fought for her family. My journey had taught me that love isn't about meeting expectations. It's about supporting one another in our true selves. And that was a lesson worth sharing.